joining us, welcome. And if it's not, thank you for coming back. A little bit about myself. Yeah, like she said, like Laura Lee mentioned, we started in a little 10 by 10 during the pandemic. We were quickly able to grow from a pop-up to a food truck to now our very first brick and mortar. So we're very proud of our little space that we've created. It took a lot of effort and we were delayed. So thank you for being here. I'm going to be honest, when they first asked me to talk about the topic of pride, I denied initially because I wasn't sure if I was the appropriate representation for this topic. We recently had an event here at the Egyptian where we celebrated the LGBTQ plus community. There was rainbows, there was flags, there was a lot of celebration, and there was a lot of pride. So looking back, I was like, I don't know if I would be a disservice to the LGBTQ plus community. But upon my own research and my own engagement with the topic or with the word, I discovered that pride, anyone can live in pride, right? I realized that from an early age, what has gotten me through my low periods in life has been pride. I looked up the definition, and initially when I researched it, the first thing that came up is pride is one of the 7 deadly sins, and we all know pride as being don't be too prideful, don't be too arrogant, and it has a negative connotation. But I found a definition that really resonated with me, and I'm going to read it to you. Where is it? It says, pride is a commitment of achievement, a positive assessment of yourself in the full context of your life. It consists of 2 essential perspectives, looking backward and looking forward in time. These 2 perspectives provide you with objective appreciation of your past accomplishments and the commitment to success in the future. So this is where I begin my story. I was born and raised in South LA, formerly known as South Central. Up until recently, it was named South Central, renamed into South Los Angeles because of the negative connotation that South Central had. Is anyone familiar with South Central? You know, the hood? Yes, LA. So that's where I grew up. It was very interesting to say the least. From an early age, I was always an overachiever. I embarked in every journey possible. I had pictures of Paris and I had pictures of these places where I aspired to travel to. But my environment around me didn't support my vision. I was a lighter complexion Latina woman growing up in South Los Angeles. I had anxiety, although at the time I didn't know. I had zero control of my environment because outside of my household, although my parents did their absolute best to protect me and shield me from the outside world, I was surrounded by gun violence. I was surrounded by my friends being murdered at an early age and most of my friends being incarcerated, my other friends getting pregnant at an early age. I knew I didn't want that life for me. So I had to really focus and hone in on my own purpose. And I was young, I didn't know what my purpose was. I knew that my purpose at the time was to go to school, focus, and be a straight A student. That's the only thing that I had control over because nothing else in my life made sense. Everything was chaos. Inside my own household, I grew up as a very Mexican child. My parents really instilled a sense of culture, Mexican culture. We didn't speak English in my household. Spanish is my primary language. So in my household, I developed an identity of a Mexican child, daughter of immigrants. In the outside world and in South Central, I was looked at as a teacher's pet, a nerd, or I wore my uniform and I was the only one that wore my uniform. So I navigated those 2 completely worlds. I was lighter complexion. So I felt that in the sense of, to my Mexican family, I was like, oh, you're güerita, or you're too light, you need to go out. So I navigated that world. And then it wasn't until I started school that I realized that the school system operated as an American school system. I enrolled in a bilingual course where I was learning English and Spanish at the same time. So I was in the American school system and now I had 4 different identities to navigate. the identity of being a Mexican child of immigrants, living in South Central, being an anxious child and suffering from anxiety, and also navigating my education in the American school system. So I was very conflicted. I didn't realize that all of that and my identity crisis contributed to me feeling anxiety, me being confused as to my purpose in life. So I continued to embark in education. I really enjoyed school. I was a straight A student, and I really enjoyed school. I found resources outside of my community because South Central was underserved, and they didn't have resources for students like me that wanted to go to college, that wanted to, look outside of the community. At the time, I was just a hyphenated individual in South Central with zero resources and zero opportunity. So I paved my own way, and I ended up at UC Berkeley. Although my dream was always UCLA, the first time I applied, I didn't get into UCLA, so I was devastated. But when I got into Berkeley, everyone expected me to go to Berkeley because, UC Berkeley, it's the #1 school right now, or at the time. So I ended up leaving to UC Berkeley. I entered as a pre-med student. I had no idea that my first chemistry class was going to be that difficult, and that day I made a decision, I'm not going to do this. I don't understand it. So it wasn't until I actually went to college that I realized how conflicted I was and how my childhood and this identity crisis that I carried really reflected in everything. I wasn't as dedicated in my studies. I wasn't grasping the material, and I wasn't grasping the concept. So I started struggling with a deep sense of imposter syndrome. I felt like I don't belong here. Did I fake my way into UC Berkeley? Everyone that I was surrounded with, I felt, had so much knowledge about the world and had so much knowledge about how to pave their own way in life, and I had no idea. Joined a sorority, did all of that, had the full college experience, and then I had my full-blown panic attack. If anybody has ever had a panic attack, you understand that it is one of the worst feelings in the world. You feel like you're dying, you feel like you can't breathe, even though to everybody else, they're looking at you like, you're fine. So I had my first full-blown panic attack. The paramedics came. My parents made the drive to Berkeley, from South Central to Berkeley. They stayed with me for a week. And once they were there, they gave me the option to stay. We didn't know it was a panic attack at the time, and I was going to all these different doctors and specialists looking for answers of what had happened to me that day, like what was it? So I made the very difficult decision to medically withdraw from Berkeley. And although looking back, it was the best decision I ever made for myself, it was also very tough. This identity crisis that I was struggling with was there with me, and now I was incapable of completing my college education. This is what I worked so hard for. This is what kept me going. So I withdrew, and I came back to the neighborhood that I was trying to escape from for a while. And that was a huge setback for me. I felt like I was disappointing my family. I was a first-generation college student, and I felt like I was disappointing myself. I was lost. I didn't know what the next steps would be. I didn't know, I'm not making my family proud. That word kept coming up. Like, I'm not making them proud. I'm not making myself proud. I'm taking 10 steps back. I was supposed to be better. I was supposed to be out of the neighborhood. So I struggled. For a year, it was virtually impossible for me to leave my house. I was still seeing all these specialists. I still remember they took me to my parents. My poor mother, her innocence, took me to a priest because she was like, I don't know what's going on with her. Maybe you need God. I don't know. Took me to a priest. The priest looked at me and said, I can't do anything. Like, what do you want me to do? And so I was like, I don't know. You're supposed to bless people. And I went countless therapists, I went to psychiatrists, I went to so many different doctors, and I was convinced that my body was failing me in some way, shape, or form. So they discovered that it was nothing, it was anxiety, and it was one of the first times that I adapted that identity as an anxious person. So I navigated this world as an individual with anxiety. And that alone was very difficult. I was put on all kinds of medication and to no avail. I was also terrified of taking medication. So it was tough, navigating all of these worlds that I had been put in, and I had no idea how to get out of it at the time. So a year later, with the help of amazing friends in my family, I was able to overcome that. I was able to leave my house. I was able to enroll in community college, and I was able to pave my way into going to UCLA, which was my dream school in the first place. So I did. I got into UCLA, one of the most impacted majors at UCLA, and things started to make sense. I'm like, what am I feeling? Oh, I feel proud. I feel proud, but I never really analyzed that. I said, okay, I've done all these things. My life hasn't been easy, but if you look around, none of our lives have been easy. So I said, I know I'm destined to do things, accomplish great things, and I know that I'm capable of leading my community. I'm not a victim of my circumstances, but I do want to be better than what people have expected from me. And I attended UCLA, I graduated, and that was one of my proudest moments in life, because this quote, going back to this quote and relating it, pride is about knowing where you are, accepting it for what it is, and trying to push for the future or what's next, right? A lot of the times I got caught up in, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. I know I'm better than this. I know I want to be better than what everybody's telling me. I want to make my family proud, and I want to get out of the situation, but I didn't know how to. So sometimes I became so fixated in where I was that I lost vision of where I was going. And I say that pride got me through a lot of those moments because, in a Mexican household, Latin household, I should say, a lot of households, there's a sense of orgullo. Orgullo is Spanish for pride. And it's knowing where you come from, accepting it, but also striving to be better and striving to push. A lot of the times I did become, in this journey and in my childhood and in my own struggles, I became a victim of my surroundings in the sense of, well, I'm in South Central, I have anxiety, everybody makes fun because I'm too light of a complexion to fit in with the Mexican girls or to be validated as a Mexican woman, but I'm too Mexican to be validated as anything else. So I became so fixated in that I feel like sometimes that held me back, and that I really struggled with that. Once I graduated at UCLA, while I was at UCLA, I still struggled with all of these questions, right? Like, what actually got me to UCLA? What actually helped me overcome most of my struggles and challenges? And it was that I never truly lost vision of what I was destined to do or what I was meant to do. And once I graduated, it really propelled me to continue pushing for more. I joined the corporate world, and again, it was a shock in a sense because not very many people in the corporate world looked like me in the sense of, yes, physically, I'm a lighter complexion and I carry myself a certain way, I suppose. But I never really related to anyone, and that hindered my ability to climb the corporate ladder. Because I felt Like I couldn't relate to anyone, and I didn't understand the corporate path because I had different experiences in life, and I had different challenges that I had to overcome. That now being in the corporate space made me question, once again, was I capable? Was I able to really succeed? And was I able to relate to my peers? People would point out, oh, you have an accent. And although they didn't necessarily mean it in a condescending or a negative way, it made me question my abilities, and it sparked this imposter syndrome yet again that I thought I had overcome at one point. You have an accent. Where are you from? You're listening to Spanish music. It was little microaggressions that really made me feel like I didn't belong. Again, I spiraled. I left the corporate world and I embarked in my own journey. I was a marketing freelancer for a long time in LA. But I kept feeling like, oh, there's something more I need to accomplish. And then I snapped out of that victim or like that nobody understands mentality. And I thought about where I fit in the world. And I started looking around and paying attention, and I realized we all come from very, very different paths. We all look very different, and there's a lot of pride and celebration in that, right? Because we can all sit here in this room together, and if you think back into what you've accomplished and where you are, the majority of that has been pride. Your vision to look beyond your circumstances, and your vision to want to be better than where you are now. So in my entire research, I've been practicing this speech, and I've been, okay, how is pride? How am I going to connect it all back? But it truly connects itself back, because in the context of the LGBTQ plus community, pride is a perfect word to celebrate. You show up as who you are regardless of what you've been through and regardless of your challenges. You embrace where you are, but you never lose vision of where you're going. You never lose vision of that future. You never lose vision of who you are. And even in the midst of the chaos, which the world is very chaotic right now, and that we have zero control over everything, you find yourself and you root yourself in what you want to accomplish and what you want your legacy to be. So pride, it's a powerful word, and it didn't make sense to me until I'm writing this, and I'm thinking, and I'm practicing on the phone, and I'm calling my friends, and I'm on FaceTime, and I'm pride, but I don't know what I'm gonna say. And I said, I just need to speak from the heart, because this is my story. I am an anxious individual. I rehearsed the speech 10 million different times, and I still didn't even say it like I wanted to say it. It came from the heart, because this is my story. This is who I am, and this is who we all are, right? We all have a sense of pride. Why do you show up to work, and why do you do the absolute best that you can? Because you carry that. You want to be better than what you were. You want to excel. As humans, I think pride is a fundamental word, and I wouldn't say value. A lot of people will differ, but of what gets us through our lowest points. I know it got me through my lowest points, wanting to make my family proud, wanting to tell the story of who I am, and this is who I am. This is what I've been through, but also this is what you can accomplish despite where you come from, despite the obstacles that life continuously throws. You can become who you're meant to become. You can reach your full potential if you just hone into that pride and what keeps you moving forward. And that's the positive assessment of pride in my own personal struggles and stories, and how it got me through the hard times. But I also think it's important to talk about how pride actually also can hinder, or too much pride can also hinder your ability to continue learning and to reach your full potential. And it's kind of interesting, because you have to have pride to be better than you were yesterday, and you have to have pride to accomplish certain things and reach certain goals. But too much pride can also get in your way of accomplishing what it is that you need to accomplish. Pride, when you have too much pride, you become arrogant. You stop learning. You stop expanding your mind, and you stop listening to others. You stop relating to others. And in my case, it made me an overachiever. Like, way too much of an overachiever that at times I made myself sick because I put so much pressure on myself, and I put so much just expectations, and there was always all these expectations that I had for myself and others, that I stopped learning. And I stopped learning about myself, and I stopped learning about my peers, my friends, and my family. Because I thought I knew it all at one point. So it was this fine line between navigating, wanting to be better, and wanting to leave my circumstances, but also being overly ambitious, wanting to do it all, that I started neglecting certain aspects of my life. And so I think that is one of the negative elements of pride, is when you become too arrogant, you stop listening and you stop learning from the world around you. And there's so much to learn. There's so much to learn from the person you're sitting next to at a cafe. There's so much to learn from the entrepreneur that walks into your business and gives you advice. There's so much to learn from the person that is walking by and is having a hard time. And at one point, I became that person. Because I was so invested in wanting to be better. I was so invested in, I was in survival mode. You know, I wanted to escape. I wanted to escape. And I ended up in this phase where I wanted to do it all by myself. And I wanted to do it all now. And I stopped listening. And I think where we are in the world and where we are in our professions, sometimes pride will get in the way of us asking for help. And that asking for help is what can propel you into your next step to help you accomplish your next goal. So it's an interesting dynamic that the word pride, it's such a simple pride, right? Word pride, it's pride, we hear it everywhere. You know, you hear it, don't be too prideful, but also be proud of where you come from. So how do we navigate these two worlds? And I'm actually grateful that I'm here, and I'm really grateful that you allowed me to speak on this, because it allowed me to learn and open up things from the past and moving into the future on how I myself can be a better individual, carry pride, but also slow down and learn and be grateful and patient with where I am and trust the timing of things. And I know that sounds so cliche, like I'm not here to tell you like trust the timing of things happen for a reason, but really they do. You can't rush timelines, you can't rush goals, you can't rush your accomplishments. When we were getting ready to open Chilte, or when we first opened Chilte, in the farmer's market, we started a Mesa farmer's market. I really wanted to tell the story of my culture, where I come from, Mexican food. Because more than food, it's our story, it's part of who I am, and it's part of something that often gets misconstrued here. Mexican food is often correlated with cheap eats and cheap tacos and Taco Tuesday. So my personal goal was to tell the story of the people that had been silenced for a long time and that couldn't tell their story for themselves. So we started off with tacos. And yes, people recognize tacos, but we wanted to elevate them, and we wanted to show the richness of our culture and the ingredients that are actually very hard to source, and they're quality ingredients. They're phenomenal, but they also tell the story of our people, of our culture and who we are. You know, insects on the menu, people get a little weirded out by that. But then when we tell our story, they understand why it's important to continue telling it, and why it's important to tell it in its own authenticity. So I was proud to showcase that, especially here in Arizona. People have a certain misconception here about what food should be. So anyways, we started Chill Day, and our mission and our goal was to tell the story as authentic as we could, be true to who we were, be true to our past, be super transparent. I don't know if anyone follows us on Instagram, but we've always been super transparent. Our struggles, our goals, and the good times, the bad times, when there's no one at the restaurant and when there's everybody at the restaurant. And funny enough, the person that connected me to Laura Lee was Carrie. She's one of our Chill Day OGs, one of our customers. And she said, Aseret, you are the perfect person to speak on this, because since you started Chill Day, you've been proud to represent Chill Day in its authenticity. The good times, the bad times, the struggles. I'm sure there's a lot of business owners here. It's not always rainbows and unicorns. There's challenges. So, yeah, in our business, I've also been able to continue practicing that, a sense of purpose, a sense of storytelling, and a sense of sharing who we are. Real, unfiltered, and that's not always easy to do, especially in the world of social media where everything gets highly hyper-curated and everybody shows up as, this person that is not, we all know is not real. But yeah, in this endeavor, it's been humbling. It's continued teaching me a lot of the importance of being present in the moment, but also continuing to push forward. There's so many things we want to accomplish. There's so many goals that we have for this space, but because of where we are now, we're still in the building phase. We have to remember to bring ourselves back, accept where we are, but carry that vision forward. And so this wasn't meant to be a motivational speech, but I feel like it turned into that. But I'm here to tell you that you can practice pride in your own life as well. There is humility and pride can coexist, and I feel like that's something that a lot of people for a long time haven't necessarily accepted, is that you can practice being humble, but you can also practice being prideful, because that pride and that purpose that you feel when you show up for yourself, when you show up for others, is what propels you forward to that next step. Is what propels you to open up that next business. It's what propels you to open up that next concept. It all makes sense to me now, standing here. The LGBTQ plus celebration and this word pride, why it's so important, and why we should all look inward and find that pride that keeps us moving forward, but never stop learning from others, keeping an open mind, an open heart, and achieving your next steps. So, yeah, that's it.